What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. Today we are doing a meta forecast of champions for the Peoria Regional Championships, which will be the first regionals with Lost Origin legal. And this is a really impactful set. I think this is going to be a wild regionals, and it might be the largest regionals, which we just got done with the largest regionals. But I have three guests with me here making this a meta forecast of champions because they are all regional champions. We have Piper Lapine, Hunter Butler, and Ian Robb here with us today. Hunter and Ian will not be using videos due to Wi-Fi issues, but you get to look at myself and Piper, so we're here. So yeah, Hunter and Ian will be talking without cameras today. Piper, would you like to tell the audience the regional championship that you won, which was very recent, so they might already know, and then maybe a little bit about yourself as a player, and then we'll go to Ian, and then we'll go to Hunter, then Ian.
Yeah, so I just won the Baltimore Regional Championships. I've been playing about 10 years. This is gonna be my first real year in Masters. Yeah, that's about it.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, that's super sick. So you won your first regionals as you won your first regionals in your first year as a full master.
Yeah,
Awesome.
first full year.
Sick. Hunter.
Hi, my name's Hunter Butler. I've been playing. This will be my 15th season. I've been playing since 2009. I won the 20. I won the second to last regional championship before COVID
Yep.
happened, and yeah, I play for Team Cutter Tap. That's about it. Yeah.
And Ian.
So I won most recently was it Indianapolis Regional, so I believe May.
Mhm.
So I won pretty recently, and yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. And how long have you been playing, Ian?
I'm basically ancient, so I think '07, yeah, 2007.
Awesome. Awesome.
I'm very ancient.
Okay.
Me too, dude. We're grandpas in this bitch.
I'm the second youngest here, but I'm actually just a grandpa at heart.
Okay, so first before we get to the Lost Origin specific things, I wanted to ask you all um about your most recent regional championships win, kind of what was on your mind going into that, on your deck choice, things like that. Did you think you had a deck that could go the distance and potentially win? How did your preparation differ? How confident were you in your deck compared to some other regional events? Let's start with you, Piper, since yours was the most recent win. How did you feel like Radiant Charizard was the event winning deck?
Yeah, I definitely think it could have won the event, or I mean, it did win the event. But I think the big thing that gave me confidence was Ross's Facebook post after Worlds. Um, he said that he thought he could have gone all the way, but he got a bit unlucky at the end. Um, Also, I just felt pretty confident playing the deck. I played a similar deck to Worlds and practiced a lot with that, so I knew what I was doing.
And did that feel different than other major events from, let's say, last season?
Yeah, I mean, Salt Lake and NAIC, I didn't test a whole lot and wasn't super confident in my play.
Okay, cool. How about you, Hunter? When you played Roxy Chomp to Dallas, I kind of know from the inside of this that we already thought the deck was really good, but you've played a lot of good decks. Did it feel like that was a deck that was for sure making top eight going into the event?
I felt like as far as like the whole deck building process, as far as like what you said with differing, I feel like our deck building process at that point had been finally like as a team had been finalized. Like as far as like everybody doing their legwork, testing all the matchups. Like I feel like our deck building process at that point in time was just so spot on. But yeah, I definitely not to sound cocky because I felt like when I played Hoopa and I got top eight, I thought like Hoopa was the best deck and I was gonna win. But that tournament specifically and like coming up to that tournament with that deck, it just there were so many times where we just were not losing any games in testing. Like there was just no losses in testing. So at that point, I felt like one of us was going to win. I didn't know if I was going to win, but I thought that the deck was going to win for sure. So I definitely felt like that specific tournament, I felt like I was going to win. But there were other tournaments like Piper said, Nats. I played Frostmoth. I felt like I had a good deck. I didn't think I was going to win the tournament, but I felt like I had a good deck and like I had a good chance. But Roxy Chump, I felt like the deck was just like the deck carried me, and I feel like more than knowing the deck, the matchup spread is what got me the win. I just didn't hit any bad matchups at all.
Right. And Ian's for your recent regional win in Indianapolis, that was with kind of the Arceus and Teleon plus counters style deck that you had been playing already. Did Indianapolis, did the deck feel any different than, let's say, when you had made top 8 with the deck prior?
Oh yeah, definitely. Going to Indianapolis, I spent probably like a month prior just testing like almost daily, just like grinding out matchups, refining the list, make sure that every single matchup was like 50-50 or better in my mind. And just by playing every single matchup so much, I knew like I had weird like text and like lines that others didn't. So I felt very, very confident going to the event. If I didn't dead draw, that like I could easily. I know it sounds like literally, I thought like I could win the event or go 0-3 drop. Like just matters if I actually like draw functional hands.
Right,
So I
yeah.
was able to draw functional hands. Things broke the right way. So I was able to set myself up pretty well by picking a good deck and got lucky.
Yeah, anybody can realistically go 0-3 drop with any deck if they get unlucky enough, or if the deck is built, with more risk in it for those kinds of hands, for sure. So I don't think it sounds pretentious to say that you felt like the deck was good going in, because you had reason to feel that. So
Yeah.
now for more Lost Origin specific stuff, I want to start by constructing what we expect the Masters Division metagame to look like. For anyone watching that might be newer to this kind of analysis, what I mean by that is what percentage of people we expect to play X, Y, and Z decks at the event. So beginning with the large portion of average to above average players, which probably make up about 50 to 75% of the tournament population, which 3 to 5 decks do you think this majority of the tournament is choosing from? Let's start with Ian on this one. Which 3 to 5 decks do you think the majority of the tournament are selecting their choice from?
For this event, I definitely believe it's gonna be a lot of Palkia variants. As a Palkia, some form of Lost Zone box, whatever you're gonna play. Be box, be Giratina, and then probably Mew, honestly. Mew's been very popular for a while, so it's probably very high odds people just continue to play it because it's a deck people already spent money on, a lot of time in too, and because Drapion isn't actually that much of a hard counter because people don't play enough. Like it's like just with the card on its own isn't enough. So I think Mew.
Okay, yeah, and if we break that down, that's 5 decks, right? Because we'll have Palkia and Teleon, Palkia Kyurem, I imagine also would be involved in that.
Yeah, I'll say that, and like even like Lost Zone, there's probably like honestly like 5 different lists you can play of
Yeah.
it.
The two main ways
But
I've been breaking it down is, does it play Radiant Zard or does it play Radiant Greninja?
even then, like you can like break it down to like if they don't play rating like Charizard, like Greninja, and then Greninja's like Giratina. So like
Sure,
what V's do you play? Like do you like want to like even play like high Mirage Gate count stuff like that? There's
sure,
so much you can do. Like do they play Cancel and Clone? Like
sure.
there's
Yeah, and
so many
as
awesome
we as
boxes.
we get into discussing it more, I think we'll talk about how that makes it a little hard to prepare for lost boxes, because they are highly unpredictable in what can be in their deck, but they're also predictable in that we know they're relying on Comfey, they're relying on Cramorant in the early game. So we do know those things, but there's a lot of unpredictable factors about the lost boxes. What about you, Piper? And if your answers are similar to Ian's, maybe you could use that as an opportunity to specify which kinds of those variants.
Yeah, I think it's about the same. The big thing I'd imagine is that people are gonna have their Palkias and Mews, and like the new set kind of came out somewhat recently, and Mew and Palkia are still very good decks. And it's a new format, just going into it, something safe pick. It feels. I think Lost Zone, people are gonna go with Greninja because I think. Well, I mean, I guess Greninja did better at the Singapore, but there's the Radiant Art at
Yeah,
Japan.
Yokohama.
I think Giratina. I think Giratina might also be up there in the top 5-ish.
Awesome. Yeah,
I
I
think
think
Lost Box will be like number 1.
Yeah, I think so. In my opinion, the Yokohama Radiant Zard Sableye is much more streamlined, and that's much more realistic to somebody who doesn't dedicate their entire life to Pokemon picking that up the week before the event. Whereas I think the Singapore style ones with Crabominable and 4 Mirage Gates and Lightning Energy and Metal Energy and stuff like that, those are going to be overwhelming. And if people do pick those up, I don't feel like people just picking that up a day before the event is even a threat. Unless they're very, very good and can pick that up, but that's a very low percent of people.
The deck sucks, so I wouldn't worry about it.
Okay.
That's true.
Yeah.
I'll chime in with Ian
Yeah,
on
go ahead.
that. Going my list is like, I know we're probably going to talk about Lost Box, but I think the Mirage Gate period, whether you're playing Giratina, you're playing Gudra, just Lost Zone with the Mirage Gate, I feel like is a lot worse than the Yokohama style of Cramorant Sableye. But the top decks that I expect are Palkia for sure, Mew. I think Kyurem might actually be slightly more popular by Palkia just because I feel like people are more inclined to believe that you can go lower bench, and because the damage cap, you're able to go low bench and be able to knock out the other decks in the meta, Palkia, Mew, Tina. So I would expect Palkia, Kyurem, Mew for sure, just because it's a comfort thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what Piper said and Ian said, like not only people's investments, but Mew and Palkia doesn't have to change too much to actually still survive the new decks, and it doesn't have to worry about like being the test dummy for a brand new engine. Like you don't. A lot of these people who are testing Lost Origin, if they played in Baltimore, they only had a couple of weeks. If they were truly testing for Baltimore, you're not going to be able to fine tune a whole new engine in 2 weeks. So it's going to be a lot of net decking, and what that means is there's going to be a lot of people who are just picking up decks and not actually physically playing them. So I'd say comfy engine as a whole, I'm going to put is in top 5, and I'll put that number 1. Like whether it be Gudra, Giratina, something new we haven't seen,
Oh
the
yeah.
amazing
If we
rares,
count every
whatever.
deck that has 4 Comfy in it as one whole like archetype, that's 100% number 1.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do, I
Yeah.
think, because they all run whatever your strategy is, the point is to put stuff in the Lost Zone and to not, to be fast. So Lost, Comfy, Palkia, Mew, like, and then I guess like in 5th is like Kyurem / new one prize variants. Everybody's trying out new one prize things, so I'll put that in 5 because I think a lot of people are really, really, really sick and tired of playing V decks, and we'll probably try to explore the one prize stuff a little bit more for this tournament.
Yeah, I certainly think we'll see people who are like in the CP race and like trying to meet a quota of how well they do at each event. I think we'll see those people in the general population stick more towards things like Palkia and Mew, like you said. And then we also have another large chunk of the tournament population who are probably just going for broke. Essentially, like if I top 8, okay, maybe we'll go for Worlds. If I don't, I had fun. And I think those people are much more likely to try out new concoctions, like Hunter's talking about the single prize stuff, because I think it's a lot less safe and reliable. Um, so we did touch on the differences between the Lost Zone boxes, but real quick, my theory on that is that the Mirage Gate Singapore style can't really be good in a wide open meta. I think that kind of deck, it's like you're spreading yourself so thin to tech for so many things. Ian talked about his Arceus deck from Indy, and he was able to narrow it down to the set of decks that he needed to counter. But if there were 20 decks that he could possibly face, you probably couldn't fit all those counters into that deck. And I think that's what the Singapore style of Lost Zone box is suffering from. Um, any agreements or disagreements?
Well,
I
just
guess you.
Go ahead, Ian.
everybody wins.
So first of all, well, technically you could play enough, but Basketball's playing 100 cards, which is not illegal. I'll start that off with that. But also, yeah, it's just not worth it, really, in my opinion, to play those type of decks right now. The metagame is way too diverse, and especially a rule I have usually going to every single like first set new format, not like Pokemon Go, not like a mini set, but like whole new set, meta changes, all these new decks, is that do not play a counter deck. because there is no meta you're trying to counter. You can play a deck that's more tailored to beat certain decks.
Sure.
But, like, I wouldn't say play a deck like Stall, because you don't know what cards you need to beat. You need to know what you need to beat before you start teching. Because, like, there's cards like, let's say, like Hoopa V. When that card was played in, like, I played at RCS before. I only played it, like, for when I knew what to tech for. Like, there's just, you don't know what to tech for right now. So, like, it's just not worth playing a tech box deck.
Right. So
And
maybe
also that
don't
other
play
deck,
straight
Lost Zone.
Vikavolt. So when you said don't try to counter the meta, maybe play a deck that's more tailored, it made me think of don't go into the tournament playing straight Vikavolt, because you'll beat all the you'll beat all the lost box decks, but then if they establish a large attacker, or you hit Arceus decks, or you hit things you didn't prepare for, I feel like something like that's not good. So you like Vikavolt?
I'm not saying I like it. I think it's fine. Like, I'm saying, like, that, like, don't go against it.
Okay.
If Vikavolt can do stuff, you can tech Vikavolt. You can put cards in that deck.
So you don't think Vikavolt's the kind of counter deck that you would stay away from?
No, I mean, like, a deck that's like
V-Union.
Like a toolbox.
U2 V-Union, yeah.
Okay.
Like that.
Okay.
You need to know what you're prepared for. Like, just what Ian said, like, we kind of have a rule like this too in our testing group, is like this brand new formats, you just, especially when we're in 1,000-person tournament, brand new format, you're more than likely going to play against 9, maybe 8 different decks throughout the tournament of day one. Like, if you have some insane foresight into what the day 2 meta is going to be, and you think that I'm going to make this meta call on because I'm going to make day 2 and this is what day 2 is going to be, then go for it. But that's very risky. That's not a plan for success. That's a plan for luck. A tournament like this, you really just want a deck that's going to set up for you every time. And as far as the Lost Zone stuff goes, like, I think, and I'm definitely I'm the person with, the only person in my testing group that has this opinion, but I don't think Giratina or any of these Mirage Gate decks are anywhere close to optimal to be ran in a 9-round tournament consistently. They're not. There hasn't been real test results or real engine results from these decks that prove that you can just rip a list online and go win an American 1,000-person regional. Whereas I think something like the Cramorant, Sableye, Charizard, or something more linear, where, like, even the Gudra has one plan. You have one thing you're doing, you do that really well, and you set up, and that will get you into day 2 and possibly win you the tournament. Setting up. And I just think the Lost, like I said, reiterate before, like I said with the Lost Zone stuff, like, I just feel like these super teched out lists, 1, you don't have a meta to tech to. You're basically guessing what you're going to play against.
Yep.
And 2, you're putting a bunch of dog starters in your deck, dude. When you're playing a comfy deck, you don't want to open Crabominable or any of these other things. Like,
yeah,
you're just putting you're like, dude, I can beat every matchup if I just have these 17 cards in my deck. But then you start opening them and you don't even play the game. So what matchup are you going to beat if you can't play the game?
That's a good way to look at it. And what that reminded me of, your differentiation of that, something I've read a lot of Japanese players kind of specify that I don't hear a lot of these days, is the difference between consistency and reliability. I feel like the Sableye Zard Lost Box is very reliable at doing the same game plan every time. And like Hunter said, Lost Gudra, reliable at doing the same game plan every time. The ones that are boxy, like Hunter said, 10 different attackers, and that's not even that large of an exaggeration. Like, those, it's hard to reliably hit. Let's say we hit 3 Palkia Inteleons in a row. It's hard to reliably make our game plan and strategy work against that matchup every single time we see it. But it's not that hard for Sableye's Charizard, because you're essentially just, all you need to know for that deck is where to place your damage counters differently. You can have those same Pokemon every time if you need them.
Well, actually, I kind of disagree with that.
Okay, go ahead, Ian. That's what we're here for.
Like, I mean, like, okay, your deck does the same thing, but it's basically how you're seeing it is that you look at your deck, go, okay, it's my game plan, look at all your matchups, and go, does my game plan beat these decks? Interesting. Like, in this example, it's like, okay, I can't think of a good example of it right now, but like Arceus Drowzon last one. It had a matchup spread. It's the same thing every time. You lost to some decks, beat some decks. Like, tech decks, the reason why they're usually good is because you can mess with that. Like, you can tech your deck for certain matchups and decks that allow you to attack are usually better because it allows you to mess with the meta spread.
Mm-hmm.
Arc Dura had a big consistency problem though. Like I'm not saying that they're I mean
is a bad example probably, but like that type of deck. That's what I meant.
No, of course. And there are definitely decks that are hindered, right? On the flip side of the coin, that are hindered by being linear, by not having any plan. You might, like
there's two sides to the sword, right?
Exactly. Like with Gudra, like what you're getting yourself into, right? You know that my out is to switch it, get it out of the active and attack it. That's your out. But when I'm playing 7 1-ofs or 10 1-of Pokemon and energy cards, whatever, however these spreads are going with these techs, and you're playing a Lost Zone deck and you're getting stuck into this matchup, and it's like, okay, I can either Lost Zone my attacker for this matchup, or I can get my Battle VIP pass to actually set up the game, or I can Lost Zone this attacker, or I can get my supporter for turn. Like the Lost Zone engine isn't, in my opinion, is not meant to be like be multifaceted as far as like maybe other than Giratina. I think Giratina has the most options to like have like, all right, here's a Cramorant, here's a Sableye, here's a Greninja, here's Giratina, boom, but still like centrally have like 3 energy types and not like go a bunch of places. Whereas like these other lists that have like 7 1-of attackers, basic Vs, whatever, Zera Aura, all these things they're jamming in there. It's like, dude, your early comfies are going to be not only harder because you're playing a bunch of 1-ofs, but I just think you're going to be less consistent overall in a 9-round tournament. And this is all goes to say that I'm saying all of this for a 9-round 1,000-person open meta tournament. Whereas if we're talking about Salt Lake,
that might be different.
The Mirage Gate version might be a bit better because you know what techs you need, and you might have more data on what a multi-win Mirage Gate list looks like.
And I think less people probably at Salt Lake as well, maybe. I might be wrong on that. Salt Lake usually has less people.
It's gonna be less. Salt Lake City's gonna be always less.
The average player is not a good deck builder, but the average player can take a deck with a linear, with not even we don't have to say linear, let's just say consistent strategy.
Yeah, exactly. Because these decks aren't even that linear when you think about it compared to what we've had the last 3 years. Like Sableye Cram Zard isn't even linear. The Sableye Cram Zard is crazy compared to the things we were playing over the pandemic, right? It was just like ADP Zacian, Pika Rom, things like that. So yeah, they're not even, it's not like shameful to play these decks because they're actually really, really good. Yeah, so I think that was a great discussion on the difference between the Lost Zone, the difference between do we want to tech out our decks for this event. Like I'm sure some people will tech out their decks a crazy amount and still day 2. And sure, they'll get lucky to not start their Crabominables in games where it matters and things like that. Or maybe they found the perfect spread, but I'm a little pessimistic like Hunter to think that those decks are optimal for this event. Piper, do you have any thoughts on that? Agreements or disagreements?
Yeah, no, I agree with most of the stuff. I think with like the list optimization stuff, we saw that a lot with Palkia last format, where like the early Palkia lists were the trekking shoes. Then we saw like Irida no switcher, and that's when like all the weird stuff like Arctura, Blissey, and then like Arc Intel was still doing well, and then by like Worlds and Baltimore and the other events last weekend, we saw like Arc Intel, Blissey, etc. not really doing as well. Like I think we're kind of in that stage right now where people are going to try the Giratina. We might see a couple like top 16, top 8, but they're not going to be like the most optimized lists as they likely will by like Salt Lake or LAIC. Or LAIC has the next set.
Yeah, next set hopefully won't be too impactful. I think it'll still be largely Lost Origin stuff. But putting Arc Intel in the same rank as Blissey. Okay, no, I'm messing
I didn't want to, but
no,
that's like examples of decks that base out.
I see.
I don't hate it that much. I played as NAIC.
Okay, so we talked a lot about what probably most of the audience listening to this meta discussion, what decks are on their mind right now. The people who are filling in, they're not elite tier players and they're not absolute noobs. They're everybody in between, what decks they're picking from. What about the upper 10%, which I consider you guys to be in? People who win regional championships, people who get top 16 invites, people who day 2 regionals regularly. What decks out of the ones we've talked about so far do you think are more inclined to be amongst the top tables and the top players, Piper?
I would imagine there's going to be a lot of Palkia. Like, the Brodner whole group has played a lot of Palkia recently.
Mhm.
I'd imagine they've just played so much with it, they're going to play it like practically perfectly every time. So I wouldn't be surprised if they just stuck with it. Maybe like a Thornton or something. Not a whole lot. Potentially even play the Kyurem. Who knows?
How about you, Hunter?
I think what I would want to be prepared for if I'm making day 2 is just all the old reliables. I want to be able to beat Palkia. I want to be able to beat Mew. And I want to be able to beat none of us has said anything about Arceus. It's like Arceus just fell off the face of the earth. There's got to be somewhere in this whole mix, like an Arceus Bib slash Tina or an Arceus Pika or an Arceus whatever, Arceus something. I still want to have a plan against something Arceus
Well, I'm
because
going to
it's one.
Peoria, so that's one AI, right?
Piper is the only person that has won an event in the past since after 2020, other than Arceus. Like Arceus has won everything, except for that one Australian thing and what Piper won. So like to think that Arceus something won't be there. So I'd like to be prepared against old reliables for sure. And then I just want to have a broad view plan against comfy decks. Like I think, in my opinion, you attack the engine, you don't attack the attackers. You try to deal with the engine. What can you do to stop the engine from being good?
Mhm.
And then the deck just kind of shrivels. So I just want to be old reliable because, anybody who wants to do well at 1,000-person tournament, like it's just like playing another nationals. You don't want to play a risk, with no meta. You don't want to play something risky. You want to play something safe. So I want to beat the safe picks.
Yeah, I really like that, and we'll get to Arceus eventually in general, but yeah, I don't think Arceus is dead, right? I mean, how many times did people think Pikarom was dead, and it never was, until
Never.
rotation killed it.
Yeah.
I
Ian,
mean that Arceus Shadow Rider Espeon VMAX deck is running around, so you have to be scared of that. All right.
yeah, that one looks a little bit more like an online event kind of deck, but
That's what I beat to get into top 8 of that 416-person thing. I
yeah,
beat an Arceus, Espeon, VMAX,
Shadow Rider,
Calyrex.
yeah. Hunter said in the chat he was against Calyrex, and I was like, "Oh, okay." And then after he was like, "Yeah, it was Shadow Rider." I was like, "Oh, if you say Calyrex, I thought you meant Ice." But go ahead, Ian. What do you think about people on your guys' caliber? What decks in the meta do you think the more experienced players are going to go towards because they think it does X, Y, or Z for them?
So I have an analogy for this. So this is like picking between let's say your Taco Bell or your McDonald's. So you're gonna go with the good old McDonald's, It always tastes the same. It's not the same issue really. So your Mews, your Arceus, your Palkia, the same decks as always. Or instead, people like me probably, with your Taco Bell. You're the deck, it's high variance. You never know what's gonna happen. So maybe it's you're playing Mew, some version of Lost Box, Giratina. I don't know. You can really be anything. So I feel like it's gonna be a lot of Mew for top players, a lot of Palkia. I think there's gonna be a lot of Arceus variants. I said before, Espeon VMAX actually seems really good because that card turns out stabilized, so I highly recommend it in that deck.
And it turns off Star Requiem.
Yeah, Star Requiem is very huge because that shuts off the whole Lost Zone deck. And even top players love playing the new deck, so I expect a lot of the new stuff and the good old.
Do you think so somebody like me, I always like to try to make something that gives me a lot of outs, right?
Okay,
And
Luke, Arceus and Helion is not a good deck.
and so personally I might be more inclined to pick something like Sableye, Radiant Charizard instead of Mew if I was given those two as my choices, because I feel like Sableye, Radiant Charizard offers more playing around different strategies and stuff like that. Do you think there's any of that going through the minds of players, or are they just going to play whatever they think is inherently strong?
I think that honestly, a lot of better players, including myself, fall in the trap of thinking that playing a deck with more options means your deck is better, which is not always true. Example I use of this is a Buzzle Lycanroc metagame. I fell in the trap of not playing Buzzle Lycanroc for a while, even though it's the best deck by a wide margin. If you're a good player, I fell in the trap thinking, oh, I need a deck with options. that's actually not always the right way of thinking. So I think a lot of players, like necessarily top 10%, whatever, will be playing a lot more decks with options. So I'll have like Lost Zone stuff, but that doesn't mean it's right.
Ian found out the power of Buzzrock in South America, round 6. Ian found out the power of Buzzrock. Me and Ian played round 6. We were both 5-0 in South America, and he was playing Pod, so that was the joke. But
I see.
Broken ass Buzzrock.
So we've already talked about, my next question was about the main Lost Box variants, and we've already talked about that. Radiant Charizard or Radiant Greninja. So we'll skip over that unless there's anything anybody wants to talk about specific to Lost Box without Tina. No? Okay.
Giratina's the better one. Don't play the problem.
I've read through every single V. There's nothing good.
So wait, what do you mean?
Don't play Lost Box with Mirage Gate.
Oh,
There's
right.
no
Okay.
good basic attackers.
Okay.
I've already thought about this. So
do you think Lost Box with Tina is better than Sableye Charizard? Or worse?
I am undecided currently. Come back to me Saturday.
Any hot takes, Piper or Hunter? Or just so completely different, it's hard to say.
I don't know. I think like Greninja builds are very prone to like Mew just going like Lost City Boss Greninja and like late game Marnie. Is what I found in testing. Like their consistency engine is a lot easier to like just body than the Zard.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times they don't have the raw dig from Greninja.
Right.
Which can be pretty big.
My hot take is that Tina sucks because I think the Mew, Palkia, Kyurem are just so much faster at doing what you're trying to do that they can pick off your Vs before you evolve, just due to the engine not being as draw heavy. Like draw 3 off Colress, draw 5 a turn is like not as good as something like a Palkia where you can search exactly what you want, or Mew when you draw like 15 cards.
Yeah.
And then you're playing, the disruption sporters. So I think the Charizard variant is better, but I'm going to be completely, if the Hurricane doesn't stop my flight from going to Peoria, I can promise you I will not be playing a Comfy in my deck for Peoria. That's a fact. There won't be Comfy in my deck.
Cool.
I have actually 2 hot takes.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so number 1, I think Dialga is really good. And also Lost Zone engine is worth more exploring with it.
Dialga is very good. I agree with you.
Yes, it is very good. And second of all, Arceus Inteleon is a dead archetype.
1 for 2 ain't bad, Ian.
No, 2 for 2? What do you mean?
No,
the deck is done terrible since it's like his creation.
So
and it doesn't beat anything. So like, why would I sign for event playing it? I mean, right now it's actually not that bad. You could probably I would honestly play a deck right now. You probably get a guaranteed day 2 at Peoria.
AI. Wait, I thought you just said it was bad.
Yeah. Oh no, it is bad, but doesn't mean you can't get day 2.
Okay.
You'll just get dumpstered in the 101st day 2 is what he's saying.
It's just you will instead just get last place in day 2.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean you're not missing day. You're making day 2 though.
So
if that's your goal, I would play Arceus Inteleon. It will destroy all these Lost Box. Radiant Gardevoir is a very good card.
Sure. Okay, Ian, you mentioned something that I want to skip ahead to a question for. You mentioned players fall into the trap of thinking if their deck has more late game outplay potential and more options to counter and things like this, that it is automatically a better deck. You said something like that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I see that happening between Palkia Inteleon and Palkia Kyurem right now. Palkia Kyurem has, it has more burst draw potential. It has more potential damage output. And I saw yesterday in the Limitless Showdown, of course, online event, best of 1, whatever factors come into this. But for the sake of this question, I saw yesterday they had nearly identical meta shares and nearly identical win rates, Palkia Inteleon and Palkia Kyurem. do you think players fall into the trap of thinking Palkia Inteleon is just an objectively better deck because you have tutors with Inteleons and Drizzles, and you can handpick your plays? Is Palkia Inteleon actually a better deck because of that? What do you think?
So I have an opinion that I think the issues are too early into the format to actually decide what is better. So we'll need to see more results and people to test more.
Mm-hmm.
Like as we saw before, multiple members of Team Shuffle Squad were doing really good in online events beforehand with Palkia Kyurem. So I think it's a deck that is very strong and has a lot of potential and has impressed me a lot. But at the end of the day, like we still are too early on in the format to know what deck is better, in my opinion.
How about you, Piper?
Yeah, I agree with that a lot. I think there's some advantages to the Inteleon. Like you, a lot of the time, have a lot of better Roxannos, because the other version only really has Guru. I think the Kyurem does have, like, if you're expecting, the Kyurem tends to do a bit better against the Palkia Inteleon. I think you need Thornton for Palkia Inteleon to like deal better with the Kyurem. Obviously, there's some weird like Greninja routing you can do, but they're very similar. Like I think it's too early to decide. Yeah.
Hunter, any thoughts between Palkia or Palkia Kyurem?
Yeah, I'm gonna disagree. I don't think it's too early to decide just because I think that Palkia is able to actually change their deck a little bit more around like whatever your goal is for this tournament.
You
Like
mean
if we're
Palkia
talking about
Inteleon?
yeah,
Yep.
Palkia and Teleon, you're actually able to change like up a couple of things, whereas the very focused. It's basically honestly the same like argument between like playing Turbo Palkia and playing Palkia and Teleon, where it's like the Turbo Palkia is gonna have the raw draw, the early aggression, and it's gonna stump like decks like Palkia and Teleon, Arc and Teleon stuff from having a weak start.
Yeah.
Whereas Palkia and Teleon has the chance to do that if you draw well, but most of the time it's going to be tempoing out that mid to late game where you're punishing your opponent via whatever it be, a supporter like Roxanne or Marnie, or a big knockout with cross switchers, whatever whatever you're choosing to do. I am in the opinion that I think Palkia and Teleon is a little bit better than Kyurem, but I don't think it's by much. And I will agree that when the meta shifts, that answer could change. But just purely speaking of this tournament and
Right.
just of the style of decks, I think Palkia and Teleon is a better deck.
Cool. Okay, so from my perspective, there are two very popular decks coming out of Lost Origin. There are Palkia Kyurem and Lost Box Sablezard. Those are like the two far and ahead, at least from online events, and we also see a lot of Lost Box Sablezard from the Japanese events as well. It looks like Lost Box Sablezard and Palkia Kyurem have high meta shares, they're performing well, and they're also getting a target on their back. To the point where we even see them countering each other, right? Palkia Kyurem now has 2 Empoleons in online events, and Lost Box now has 3 Path to the Peaks to counter the Empoleon. So if these decks are even countering each other, are we just expecting those two decks to get countered out of the tournament? Is that something that can happen, Piper?
I mean, I feel like the Curum's a bit difficult to like. I feel like counter wise, like it really depends what you're trying to counter.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit more prone to brickiness just without like the Inteleon or B barrel. Um, like I think they're both pretty easy to counter. I think that's what you're saying. Like, um, I don't know if that makes sense, but like
They're both counterable.
I don't think they're both very counterable, I feel. And it's not like super harmful to your consistency. Whereas like a lot of people at the beginning of Brilliant Stars are going out of their way to beat Mew. And a lot of times it wouldn't be like 50-50. This I feel like you can definitely get a bit more in the advantage. Like double Empoleon's pretty strong against the Lost Zone boxes. Um, like rating Greninja's really strong against them. With like Cologne, Marnie's and Paths and Roxanne is really good against the Kyurem. You can also play like a metal attacker if you're playing Arceus. And like I feel like that definitely gives you a bit of an edge without like harming your overall like game plan.
Sure. So now my follow-up question to that, because I pretty much agree with that. My follow-up question to that, if these decks are counterable and people already know how to counter them, does that make them bad plays for this tournament?
No.
I don't think so.
No.
Okay, Ian, go ahead.
This meta, like as I said before, like this meta is way, way, way too early to be like, oh, that can counter a deck. Like that means we're already creating like a meta game. We're creating a loop. Like the meta, the counter decks, what's the best decks? Like we're just way too early on to decide like what's the counter decks. But also at the same time, like there's gonna be like 1,200 people playing this event. I don't know. I think it's the biggest regional of all time. So like you can't predict. Like I could pick a deck that I counter stuff. I guess at the other side of the meta. Like you can't really counter strong decks because like in any card game, Pokemon especially, a strong deck's a strong deck. You can beat your bad matchups.
All right, so people that have been practicing Palkia Curum and Sableye Zard, you don't think they should be scared off because people know how to tech for them?
No, of course not.
Because they're good
No,
decks.
not at all.
They're good decks for a reason.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm not going to end up like finding a broken counter for it.
Right,
but
yeah, obviously Ian's winning the event with the broken counter for Sableye Zard, but
I don't know I haven't played that deck one time. I played other decks though against it. A lot of decks.
Hunter, do you have agreements or disagreements?
I just think like what Piper said too is like a lot of the brand new decks, almost all of them, Gudra, Tina, Lost Zone variants, the Curum, they're all very, very play out of your hand, and they're all very build your hand, and like I feel like they're mirror matches, and like these new decks playing against each other, there's not a lot of Marnie and Roxanne going on, so it's like your 12 card hand versus my 12 card hand. So I think the best way, if the question is still like what to counter, I think Marnie peak, Roxanne peak, having a hand disruption card is like the most medium counter for all of these decks. Is just changing their hand.
I'd agree.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, as trivial as it sounds, I think that's like actually the best way to go about teching your deck right now, because it techs against everything, and it's not just like, oh, I have my crab for this matchup. No, I'm just adding a couple extra Marnie or something, and
Right.
the Marnies will come up. I just think you want to attack people. You want to attack people's hands, and there's a lot of like Luminion coming into decks, which wasn't really a thing. Really, that has been huge, and a lot more Crobat. Like I think just Path and Marnie are just really strong right now.
Yeah, like essentially the Curum deck runs off of Radiant Greninja, Crobat. Some of them are adding Luminion now, and they have Palkia V-Star and Curum. So there's like 4 to 5 game deciding abilities that this deck is using. And then, as all of you have mentioned, I think in the mid to late game, the Lost Zone boxes, one Comfy doesn't really do much if you just got Roxanne. So they're looking to use Radiant Greninja and maybe scoop up Netted and use it again. And some of them are running 0 to 1 stadium. And so Path to the Peak might just always stick against them. So that's also something to consider. So yeah, I think hand disruption plus abilities being turned off it's been proven to be pretty good in the Pokemon trading card game from time to time.
Yeah, only slightly.
So next, Mew VMAX is still very good. Hunter, you played it in a 400 person late night event and got top 4 with it. You were playing a bit of a spicy list with its own Drapion for the mirror match, which I hear was broken in the mirrors.
Yeah, dude, it was so sick.
So is Mew VMAX as good as it looks in the Limitless Showdown? It went 15-1 yesterday out of 600 people. Is it that good, or was it a lucky run?
Mew is a good best of one deck too. Don't get it twisted. Like,
Right.
Mew punishes the best of one stuff. So I don't want to like be have everybody's mind skewed in a best of 3, because when you're playing against decks that have Marty and Peak and have one strong one prize attackers, like the games 2 and games 3 might not go your way. But I will say that once again, Old Reliable, there's nothing wrong with Old Reliable, and it's consistent. And I think by now, if you've played or both versions of Mew, the Meloetta and the straight DT version, you will know that DT version is just very, very, very strong and oppressive being able to have supporters and have good supporters and be able to do the same OCOing
Yeah.
and just pick and choose what you want to knock out. So I do think Mew is strong. But I don't think that people are going to really play Drapion in your deck, dude. There's 1,000 people. There's a chance you don't play any Mew. There's a chance you play one Mew, and the Drapion really isn't going to save you all that. I played Drapion myself in that tournament, not only because it was kind of a meme, but because I was like, I know this online tournament is going to be full of Mew, so I'm just going to shove Drapion in it. Whereas when I'm preparing for a regional, I don't think the regional will be full of Mew.
Yeah.
I expect myself to play 1 to 2 day one, maybe more side on the one, and then maybe 1 to 2 day two. So like 3 altogether, and you don't need Drapion to beat Mew. Like, it's not like you shove Drapion in your deck and you just automatically beat Mew. That's not how it works.
Right.
There are things that Mew can do. Like, I've speculated on like Heroes Medal, and these other things that you can do to be able to make your Mew VMAX die while allowing them to get their Drapion off, and then you lost zone it or whatever, however that works. But I think Mew's strong. I encourage people to try the new version if you haven't tried it. And I think it's definitely something that you should not only be familiar with playing against by now if you're playing the Pokemon trading card game or even living under a rock. I think you should be familiar with playing against Mew, but also be prepared for the DT version and less of the Meloetta version.
Yeah, and I will give my opinion on this to give you guys a chance to agree or disagree, but we've been talking about playing a deck that's just inherently powerful and consistent and old reliable, and I think Pokestop Mew VMAX is like that embodied. Like, it's just a strong deck regardless of what's around it, in my opinion. It's just inherently good. Piper and Ian, do you have any thoughts on Mew between the different variants? What I just said, what Hunter said, anything on Mew?
Good deck.
Both feel good.
Good deck.
Yeah, that's really it.
Okay. Sorry, Piper. Did you have anything to add?
Both versions of Mew have felt pretty good. I think you have to play Disruption in it. I like the Path Roxanne included in the
Oh, yeah.
list.
I forgot to mention that. First place from the Limitless Showdown played Path Roxanne.
Yeah. Avery also seems very good in this meta. Like, it just punishes the overbenching of the Lost Zone engine, which has definitely, like, pretty common if they're, like, extending to get the extra Lost Zone pieces for, like, a Sableye or whatever. And you could just cripple their engine.
The Avery too, like, you can literally just create 2 prize cards. You're like, all right, cool, get rid of 2 of your bench Pokemon, horn out a V, so now I get 2 prize cards this turn. Like, it's just actually ridiculous the amount of plays that the supporter version can play. Like, when you play the Lesser Sparkle version, you're literally locked into like, all right, cool, I need to boss, or I'm sparkling turn 2, or I'm not playing optimally, and then I'm bossing every turn after that, and I don't have anything else to do. This version actually has like different lines of play where you can literally create prizes that were not there anymore, which I think the other version had a super big problem with, where you're like, I need to hit catcher heads and sparkle and draw an energy so that I can turn 1 kill your V, or else I'm losing 2 Fuse and Strike energy and now I lost all my damage output. This version's like, I don't care about any of that. I'm just going to snipe a V, potentially snipe that V a second time, and then whether you're playing Marnie's or Roxanne, doing that in the late game and then pushing. I mean, Mew VMAX with Oricorio in play is, if not the biggest thing to KO. Like we don't, Duraludon's not super popular. Like, that's the biggest Pokemon to KO. Maybe,
And
I guess
Kyurem. Yeah, they're even,
too.
right? Yeah,
they're even. That's the big. I mean, and if I'm worried about getting Path and Roxanne as Mew, you just need an out with. Whereas Kyurem, if you discard all your energy, you need a whole lot more than just a stadium to get out.
True. Okay, so next question. There were 2 Goodra variants in top 8 of the Limitless Showdown, so people are looking at that. One was Lost Goodra, pretty straightforward and influenced by Joe Bernard's list, which I think was the best starting list for Gudra. And then we also have Arc Gudra that was in the top 8. I think Arc Gudra has the potential to add in something like a 1/1 metal attacker, and I've seen that to have a better cure matchup, where I think the Lost Zone version probably doesn't have that opportunity as much. Any thoughts on Gudra or the variants or just the card in general? Hunter.
I
Oh,
think
Piper, go ahead.
oh I think it's pretty good against all the one price stuff. Your Palkia matchup could be a bit awkward, um, depending on like the cross switcher stuff, because you can go like double cross switcher, or you could go like cross switcher boss reset it. That's mainly with the arc variant. I think it was the last one variant was the other one. Um, not, I guess you can like net your board to do that. So your Mew matchup, they can always blow it up sometimes or just overrun you early. Your Giratina matchup seems really awful, but like I do think there it has some advantages, especially against like the one price stuff that's trying to do like chip.
Cool.
Gudra's cool. I'm not the biggest fan of tank decks. I've never, over my 15 years of playing, ever chose a healing / minus damage deck. I've done control, I've done all this other stuff, so it's really just not in my play style. Like Piper said, you could do the quad cross switcher play. I actually played Palkia and Teleon in a 1K yesterday, and I had to go through 3 Gudras, and you can attack with the baby Palkia V to get the 200 instead of worry about their bench damage. So I think there are decks that have outs to it, but it definitely does have some positive matchups. And I will say that there are some people who have probably just never even played against Gudra and will just not know what to do.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. So this question comes from Twitter. As we're kind of getting out of the discussion now, what meta in specific factors do you guys consider into your deck choice? So things that aren't based on what other people are playing, such as consistency versus power level versus techs, how comfortable you are with the deck, um, surprise factor of cards in a closed deck list environment. Um, and this one that they added also was interesting. Value in playing a deck that you think is a little bit worse than the best deck, but will be prepared for and countered less. Do you consider any of these things? Anybody can go first. We'll go Hunter first.
Oh,
If Piper's going to talk, go ahead, Piper. Nobody was going to talk, so I'm
I
just going to
guess
call
I
somebody.
kind of went with like the less prepared thing for Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
Like I assume people wouldn't test a whole lot against Radiant Zard, and even if they were, like most of them aren't going to be testing against optimal Radiant Zard players, so they aren't going to know how to play the matchup like perfectly. So I do think there's a big advantage in that, in them like not knowing the optimal routing, and you just being able to like know exactly what you're doing in the matchup and them not. That's how they're gonna like make the misplays that are gonna give you like bigger differentials to like win the game.
Ian.
I don't know. I think I've said it before. Like, I don't know. It's just metagame's like this too early to like actually get advantages. So it's literally just like I feel like I'm like repeating myself. Like I feel like just play a solid deck. Don't worry about anything like advantages really.
Right.
Like you just can't.
Well,
We're too early
what
in.
about something like a surprise factor of a card in your deck that people aren't expecting? So like something like the Roxanne Path in Mew, or something like Avery in a deck that it doesn't normally play in, or something like I don't know, more Pekko that'll be good in one matchup and people don't know how to play around it. Are things like that, or even like Piper said, she played Radiant Zard and didn't expect anyone to test against a good Radiant Zard player. Do things like that come into your deck choice when you're not caring about the metagame?
Maybe a little like random tech cards. Like I agree with like good like one ofs is very important. Like yeah, like Roxanne Path, like something like that in Mew is insanely good when people don't expect it.
Mm-hmm.
I think something definitely to consider in your deck build, but I think it's very minimal.
Okay. Hunter, any thoughts on that?
I think that I'm a predominantly a metal call player. Like I feel like all my best results have always been with meta calls and meta gaming. So for this tournament specifically, like outside factors, I would just say like having the disruption stuff when we're in a kind of a field of new decks that are not messing with your hand. I think that is like just like sometimes you try to attack engines more than you attack the decks, and I think that is something that sometimes comes into like deck building or a tournament prep when you're like, yeah, I'm scared of the attacker, or I'm scared of the variant, but the variants could be like with the Palkia thing, it could be Kyurem Palkia, it could be Palkia Big, it could be Palkia Intel. Like you might not be able to counter all three, but you might be able to counter Palkia's ability, you know? So like just centralizing what you want, what you're trying to do with your deck. Like, and it might not always be very clear and cut.
Awesome. Well, that's great, guys. Thank you so much for all of your input. Was there any, before we go, I just don't want to stop anybody from having any thoughts. Was there a deck or a card or anything like that that you wanted to mention that we didn't get to?
Dialga, it's good. That's it.
Dialga V-Star, right. Yeah, the
Good
Lost
deck.
Zone engine for Dialga is actually really, really cool.
I'll say I'm not going to play it because I don't have enough time to actually perfect it, but I think it's super strong as the Hisuian Zorark. You just hit so much damage. It's got a bunch of ways that you can potentially play it with anything because it's colorless. It gets all the tricks, all the techs. Like you can play Crobat, you can play Luminion, you can play Bib, you could play Inteleon if you wanted to. I don't think it'd be that good, but you could if you wanted to. I just think it hits an insane amount of damage to hit 300, to hit upwards of 300 is for a single energy is inherently strong. And I think that there's potential that someone would do well with a variant at Peoria. And then maybe when the meta shapes up a little more and people get interested in like the more wonkier, off stuff, not Kyurem, not Giratina, not all these other things, that Zorak will get explored into more than it probably should have already been.
All right, cool. Hot take there for Zorark to end things. Thank you guys so much for being here. If was there anything that anybody wanted to shout out or mention your Twitters or anything like that, Piper?
My Twitter is just my name, Piper Lapine. Shout out to my friends for testing, especially Mikey for bullying me for not shouting him out. Yeah.
Okay, great. Ian?
I have two shoutouts. Shout out Tate Whitesell and Isaiah Chevelle / Zaya Lee. And follow Team FMC. I don't think we actually have a Twitter, but cool team. Bunch of cool dudes. And shout out Infinity.
All right, and Hunter.
Shout out Team Cutter Tap. Go subscribe to the website. We have old articles. We're going to be coming out with new articles. Hopefully, I'm going to be writing soon. I haven't planned anything yet because I've done pretty trash lately, so I haven't had anything good to write on. But as soon as I have something good to write on, I'm going to write on it. Hopefully, my plane doesn't get canceled by the hurricane, and I'll get to play in Peoria.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being here again. 3 regional champions, people who have had such great accomplishments in the game, and I'm really happy to allow you guys to share your resources and thoughts with the community. So thank you all for watching today. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for daily Pokemon TCG content. Follow Piper and Ian on Twitter, and when Hunter makes a Twitter, you can follow him too. Check out all my sponsors, coupon codes, things like that in the description. Join the Discord, all of that good stuff. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great day. See you next time here on Celio's Network.